It's easy to take modern machines for granted. Just look back in time and you appreciate what we have now. For thousands of years, mankind relied on trained animals to do the grunt work of moving a load from point A to point B. That job became a whole lot easier when the forklift was introduced early in the 20th century. And maybe the best part, you didn't have to clean up after it with a shovel. A few years later, the hand pallet jack was invented. With it, a worker could move a pallet of materials in tight spaces where a forklift would never fit. Eventually, somebody came up with the bright idea of putting an electric motor on a pallet jack. It changed the way we move heavy loads by combining the power of a motorized forklift with the convenience and maneuverability of a hand pallet jack. Today, these useful machines can be found all across the country. In some workplaces, they even outnumber forklifts. They're popular because they can get into spaces where forklifts can't go. And if the work requires frequent stops, they're more convenient than a forklift because they're designed to allow the operator to easily start and stop and walk away from the unit without having to unbuckle a seatbelt. The lift height and weight capacity for motorized pallet jacks vary by manufacturer and model, but most can lift a load as high as 6 inches off the ground and can carry as much as 8,000 pounds. They're known by lots of different names. Depending on where you live and work, you might call these machines electric pallet trucks or motorized hand trucks. In this video, we'll refer to them as motorized pallet jacks or simply pallet jacks. Specifically, we're going to talk about motorized pallet jack safety. We'll start with the importance of training. Then we'll cover the basic operations and controls of the two most common types of motorized pallet jacks, walkies and walkie riders. We'll talk about common accidents and the injuries that can occur if a pallet jack is misused or the operator is not properly trained. And our main focus will be on safe operating procedures. Compared to other types of machines found in industrial workplaces, motorized pallet jacks may look simple enough. So what's the big deal? What's the worst that could happen? Well, the reality is, motorized pallet jacks can pose serious hazards. Misuse or fail to fully understand how to operate them properly, and they can cause serious injury, even death. Some people mistakenly think that you don't need training to use a pallet jack, but that's simply not true. Federal law requires training and certification before operating motorized pallet jacks. That's because they're covered under OSHA's Powered Industrial Truck Standard, which is the same standard that governs forklifts. Be sure to follow your company's rules for operating this equipment. You must be trained and certified on each specific type. Keep in mind, if you're trained to operate a forklift, that doesn't automatically qualify you to operate a motorized pallet jack. And operating a pallet jack does not qualify you to use a forklift either. There are many models of motorized pallet jacks offered by different manufacturers. From one to the next, the controls, features, and functions will vary. Even though we can't demonstrate every model of motorized pallet jack in this video, we can discuss operational basics common to most of these machines. So, our focus will be on the two main types of motorized pallet jacks, walkies and walkie riders. Walkies can be operated as you walk either ahead of the pallet jack or behind it. They're not designed to ride on. Walkie riders, also known as rider jacks, can be operated from the operator's platform or from the floor. Both walkies and walkie riders have directional and speed controls. The control handle and arm regulate direction and braking, and you steer by swinging the handle in the intended direction. The handle also has buttons for raising and lowering the forks, and for forward and reverse speed control. Most control handles also have a reverse button or belly button switch, which reverses the direction of the pallet jack if the operator contacts the switch. On most walkie models, the control handle also acts as an emergency brake. When the handle is moved to a complete vertical or horizontal position, the pallet jack stops moving. On walkie riders, there's also a grab bar that provides support and control. Because of these differences, each machine has its own set of operating procedures and safety rules. Your company will give you specific training for the pallet jack you'll be operating, including function of all controls. Unfortunate as it is, accidents sometimes happen when people operate motorized pallet jacks, and usually it comes down to the operator. They're either not following safe procedures or not familiar with the controls of a specific model. What kind of accidents are we talking about? Here are some of the most common.
A pedestrian is hit by a falling load because the load is unsecured, unstable, or the operator takes a turn too fast. A pedestrian gets caught between a pallet jack and a fixed object. Pedestrians or operators have their feet or toes run over. An operator is crushed between the pallet jack and shelves or storage racks. A container is pierced, and workers come in contact with hazardous materials. Workers engage in horseplay or improper use, such as riding on a walkie pallet jack. An operator falls off or is thrown from a walkie rider pallet jack. A pallet jack rolls off the edge of a ramp or loading dock, falling on the operator and killing her.
How can you prevent these types of accidents? That's the subject of our next chapter. Unfortunately, the accidents we just viewed happen far too frequently. Once you've been trained and authorized to operate a motorized pallet jack, it's your responsibility to practice safe operating procedures. And it all starts with a pre-use inspection. OSHA requires that all powered industrial trucks, including motorized pallet jacks, be examined at least daily before being placed into service. If the pallet jack is used on a round-the-clock basis, it needs to be examined after every shift. Follow the manufacturer's instructions and your employer's checklist. In general, begin with a pre-start visual check with the power off.
Do a visual examination of your pallet jack and remove any items that could fall off during operation, such as tools, gloves, or other equipment.
Inspect for physical damage that could affect operation. Are the wheels in good working order? Are they free of damage and debris? Check for fluid leaks under or around the pallet jack. Check the battery for damage or loose or missing cables, and for any visible leakage. Also, make sure compartment covers and brackets or retainers are in place. If applicable, check the battery fluid level according to the manufacturer's instructions and your training. Check the condition of the forks for any damage, cracks, bends, wear, or other deficiencies. Inspect the handguard for damage. Are all warning decals and data plates in place and legible? The data plate, also known as nameplate, capacity plate, or ID plate, provides important information such as the pallet jack's weight and maximum load capacity. Loads should always be within the rated capacity of the pallet jack. In addition, the capacity plate may tell you the percent grade it can be safely operated on and whether or not it can be operated in hazardous atmospheres. After the pre-start visual check, perform an operational check with the power on. Check that gauges and battery indicators are at correct levels. Make sure the control handle moves up and down smoothly. The forks raise and lower properly. The wheels turn smoothly. The speed controls work properly in all speed ranges. The belly button switch works. The brakes stop the pallet jack quickly. The power or emergency disconnect is working. And the horn works. If you see a problem or a defect with the pallet jack, don't use it. Mark it as out of service and report it to your supervisor. Don't take chances with a pallet jack that may be unfit for duty. Now that you've completed your pre-use inspection, you're ready to start moving loads.
Always wear proper foot protection and other protective gear as specified by your company. To prevent slipping, make sure your hands are clean and dry and that there's no grease on your shoes.
Now, let's say you approach a load and this is what you see. Just because someone managed to stack a load onto a pallet doesn't mean it's safe for you to move it. If you're not sure whether the load is too heavy or too large for your pallet jack, don't hesitate to ask for help. Also, check the condition of the load. If it looks unstable or off-center on the pallet, don't try to move it until it's centered and secure. Use shrink wrap if a load might slip or if it's too high for the backrest. Off-centered or oversized loads reduce the pallet jack's listed capacity and stability, which were figured under ideal conditions, meaning a uniform load with a precise load center placed perfectly on the forks. Make sure the pallet itself is not broken, missing any boards, and has openings large enough for the pallet jack's forks. Another thing, there's a reason they call them pallet jacks. Don't set boxes or other containers directly on the forks. When approaching a load, slowly align the forks so they'll enter the pallet or skid evenly spaced. Move both forks under the load as far as possible while keeping the load centered on the forks. Raise the forks until the load is lifted, just high enough for the wheels to engage and for good floor clearance. If the load can't be lifted, don't force it. Break the load into smaller loads or use equipment with greater lift capacity.
Plan your route ahead of time before traveling with a load. Make sure there are no obstructions that might present a hazard.
For walkie models, position yourself so you have clear visibility and face the direction of travel. Whenever you can, have the load trailing behind. This will give you more steering control and allow you to watch for uneven floor surfaces and other obstacles. When operating with the forks trailing, always have one hand on the controls. Use the hand closest to the pallet jack to operate the control handle. When possible, walk ahead and to the side of the unit when traveling forward, and keep your feet out of the path of the pallet jack. If you need to operate the walkie with the load end leading, always place both hands on the control handle. Watch out for load swing when making sharp turns. The rear end will swing wide to the outside of a turn. Make sure you have clearance and watch for people in the area. Walkie rider models are similar to walkies, but can also be operated from a platform built into the unit. Great for when you have to travel long distances. On most walkie riders, you primarily travel with the forks trailing, except when picking up or dropping off a load, or entering enclosed spaces like truck trailers. When operating a walkie rider from the operator platform, place one hand on the control handle and the other on the grab bar if equipped. Keep your entire body inside the operator area. Hands and feet that stick out can lead to serious injury when you pass near fixed objects or other vehicles. Whether it's a walkie or a walkie rider, it should go without saying that a motorized pallet jack is not a car, and it doesn't handle like a car, especially when turning. For both types of pallet jacks, avoid extreme movements. Use smooth, careful operation. Start and stop gradually to prevent the load from shifting position. Come to a complete stop before changing direction. Turning too quickly can cause the load's center of gravity to shift, which can lead to the load falling or the unit becoming unstable. Use established traffic lanes and be alert, especially at corners.
Slow down and sound your horn at all intersections, cross aisles, and wherever your vision is obstructed. Don't assume others see you and can avoid you. If someone is in your way, wait until it's safe to proceed.
If your view is obstructed, travel with the load end trailing if possible, or have a trained coworker spot you.
And never drive head-on toward anyone standing in front of a rack, shelf, or other fixed object. Communicate with them so they're aware you're approaching, and always travel parallel to them while keeping a safe distance.
Come to a complete stop before raising or lowering a load. It may take a moment before the unit stops moving due to momentum. That's why it's important to maintain a slow, steady speed and to make sure the brakes are working properly. If you sense that your pallet jack is about to tip over, step clear of the unit if possible. However, the only sure way to avoid injury is to avoid tip-overs. When you're operating a motorized pallet jack on ramps and inclines, there are special considerations to keep in mind. First of all, be extra careful and travel slowly. Don't angle the pallet jack or make any turns while it's on an incline. When walking with a pallet jack, travel with the load end downhill. If the load restricts visibility or requires the backrest to support the load, travel down the grade with extreme caution. Keep the load end uphill and position yourself off to one side. When riding on a ramp, pallet jacks with full load should be driven with the forks upgrade. When not carrying a load, the forks should be pointed downgrade. Always refer to the pallet jack's operating instructions as well as the data plate for safe operation on grades. Because of their maneuverability, motorized pallet jacks are great for operating in tight spaces, such as freight elevators and truck trailers. When you enter a tight area, enter with the load end leading. Always be aware of your surroundings. Maintain a safe distance from the edge of ramps or platforms while on any elevated dock or platform. You may need a dock plate to bridge the gap between the dock and a trailer. Inspect the dock plate so it is secure, in good condition, and is designed to hold the combined weight of the load, the pallet jack, and you. Before driving onto an elevator, truck, trailer, or railroad car, make sure the weight of your pallet jack plus the load does not exceed the capacity rating of the elevator or truck bed. Also, inspect the flooring for breaks or weak spots. The brakes of the truck should be set, and as a best practice, the truck should be secured by mechanical means such as a restraining system or wheel chocks. Also, if the trailer is not coupled to a tractor, additional support at the front of the trailer may be needed. Never carry riders. Whether it's a walkie or a walkie rider, passengers are not allowed on this type of equipment. Also, never ride the equipment yourself unless you're using a walkie rider with an operator platform. Take your time. There's nothing so important that it's worth risking safety. Now that you've arrived at the drop-off location, it's time to deliver the load. Carefully steer the load into place using both hands. Come to a complete stop before lowering the load. Feet can be crushed when forks are lowered, so make sure your feet and everyone else's are safely out of the way. Lower the forks and look carefully as you're pulling out, watching for pedestrians or objects such as racks. Okay, you've been working hard and it's time for a quick break.
Choose a level space to park the pallet jack that's not in front of exits, stairs, walkways, or fire equipment.
Lower the forks all the way, set the controls to neutral, and ensure the brakes are engaged. If you're going to leave the pallet jack out of your sight or be more than 25 feet away, you'll need to shut off the power to prevent unauthorized use. At the end of your shift, battery charging should take place only in areas designated for that purpose. Forks should be lowered. Ensure all controls are set to neutral and the power is off. Ensure the brakes are set before attempting to change or charge batteries. The battery charger should be turned off before connecting it to the battery. Otherwise, a spark could cause the battery to explode. It's important that you never attempt to charge, change, service, install, or remove batteries unless you've received specific training and authorization. Always follow the battery charger instructions and pallet jack service manual, and wear appropriate safety gear. Motorized pallet jacks are great tools. They're economical and maneuverable, especially in congested areas, but they always have to be operated with care. Before you step up to the controls, make sure you're familiar and comfortable with the controls and know the load capacities and limitations of the model you're about to operate. Also, follow the manufacturer's operating instructions for each piece of equipment that you use and practice safe operating techniques every time.